So I think the world is changing in a very positive manner, especially with the advent of internet and online that has really caught the imagination of everybody across the globe. I think this is bringing in an environment of frenemies, and frenemies are friends and enemies. So the same guys you are competing with and the same guys you are befriending, right? And this is a very typical thing that is going to hit a large amount of businesses, because there's no point trying to build wasteful expenditure around areas where you do not get a competitive edge, right? For example, Telecom led this bandwagon in India. Towers are not what are going to give us an advantage, so let's share towers, right? Passive infrastructure is not going to give us advantage, so let's share passive infrastructure, right? I collaborate with the same guys that I fiercely compete with. Is Google going to win the war versus telecom operators, or telecom operators are going to get an edge over Google? I think the world is such a large space that it's not him or him, it is both. I think if you start competing, come to some sort of an agreement, a new business model, you'll find ways to survive in an environment that will build frenemies. We as HR people have to understand how this is going to impact our people, our hires, our development, because you will have to have people in future who will have to survive in a frenemy sort of an environment versus cutthroat. I'll kill this guy no matter what, Coke, Pepsi, 5 rupee bottle and chota bottle and something else. I mean, they're fiercely, right? There is no collaboration that happens. For all you know, they might be running 2 plants at 2 different capacities. I'm not suggesting, I'm not an expert on colas, and I'll refrain from that. But I think every industry will face this sort of a dilemma. This next big change, and I think you talk about it to say these millennials and how do we deal with that, but I think I don't see that as a challenge. The challenge that I see is that we are moving from experience to relevance, and that's a big change that's happening. I think gone are those days where you could be sitting, creating an organization and saying, I need 20 years experience guy to do this job. I need 30 years experience guy to do this job. You can only be a CEO when you've slogged your whatever for 35 years. It's not going to work like that, because it's relevance. What's the fun of trying to reinvent a wheel somewhere where a guy can do things better than you, right? I chair Micromax, but I do not know probably 10% of what a youngster knows on devices, right? You and me, or some of you, I mean many of you are very, very young. Some of you like me still need to read a manual to understand how a gadget works. Yeah, go to a youngster, he doesn't need any gadget to figure it out through a manual or something. He can do it through hit and trial much quicker than you and I can. So I think this relevance thing, and are you willing to give up? Are you as organizations going to say both will survive? There are some jobs that will require experience, but most jobs will require relevance as you go forward. And if X is relevant, he's relevant no matter he has experience or he doesn't have experience. Are you ready for that? If you don't do it, somebody else will do it. That's how things are changing. And the third thing, a little while back, people used to ask us, 100 million customers, 200 million customers, how do you manage it? What gives you sleepless night? And this was my perennial answer when we had not reached 100 million. My big problem is scale. How do I develop scale? Because I have no benchmark. Most of the countries have population of only 50 million, 60 million, 70 million. Who do I learn from to say I want to scale up this company to 100 million customers? So it was hit and trial all the time. We were creating our own systems, creating our own IT, creating our own, whatever. And it was hit and trial, so those sleepless nights were coming from scale. But as you build these organizations, and today somebody was to come and ask me, so given the environment, what is your biggest challenge? I think my biggest challenge now is complexity. And let me explain this to you. Can you imagine a telecom company, and this applies to many other industries, I can replicate the same example. There's a telecom company, there's a financial services company, there's an entertainment company, because we also sell more music than anybody else sells in the country, right? We are the largest music company compared to anybody else. We are also a health company because we sell health services, and we have doctors and medical practitioners who run that environment, right? We have bankers who run the financial services company, and then we have the media where DTH are different types of people. So you hire bankers in your organization. They want different types of salaries. They are not. You can't compete on salary with the telecom guys. You tell them to entertain somebody outside. They want expensive wines to be served on the table because that's the culture that they've come from. You hire people for media. Their day starts at 12 noon, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, ends up later. But the organization meetings, are all over. So these guys are isolated. How do you deal with them? So I think managing this sort of a diversity creates such a complexity in an organization that many organizations are not ready for it. Now you'll say, how does it apply to my organization? Very simple, it applies to your organization. Do you realize that when an iPod was created, right, it did not only change how music was heard, it also changed how automotive companies started redesigning cars to make sure there are contraptions where you can listen to music. Nike redid the entire apparel chain to make sure you could listen to music while you're running, while you're swimming, while you're squatting, blah, blah, blah. So today, changes that happen impact many other industries, right? And if you are not watching this complexity, you're in trouble. So I think we are clearly, moving from a scale to complexity. The third and important, I think, is this whole data tsunami that is hitting the world. This is for real. An average Indian is going to consume 1,000x of data in the next 10 years, whether you like it or not. Some of it will happen because the gadgetry that you're using, because the environment around you, because there's more content, but most of it will also happen because the form of the content is changing. It's not that you are just watching 10 films and you are watching one film. You might be watching only 2 films, right? But you were watching a standard definition yesterday, you're watching a high definition today, you'll watch a 3D tomorrow. Each one of them is a 10x multiplier on what I just said. Now you're saying, what the hell is he saying? How does that make a difference to people and what happens? Very clearly, the difference that it makes is now you have to start seeing the world in a different angle. I would say the world is getting divided into 3 categories of people, to simplify it to that extent. So there are data natives, there are data immigrants, and there are data aliens, right? And many people are data aliens who are probably on the wrong side, and they'll find it very tough to survive. Jobs to them after 50 years of age, each guy is going to face a lot of problem, whether he likes it or not, no matter which industry he's in. Data immigrants are guys like me, right? I was born in the baby boomers era, but I worked very hard to understand data. I actually invested time. I played around, but made sure I remain relevant. If I become irrelevant, there's nobody to blame. But many of you could fall into the category of immigrants to say, I will immigrate into that space. And data natives, I don't have to explain to you, to say these are the guys who are born with data. They can play with 5 devices simultaneously. They can play a game in India with somebody sitting in United States of America, blah, blah, blah. All that will happen, right? But this is for real. So how does it impact your organization? First and foremost, I think as HR people, with so much of data that will be flowing with you, you will need deep analytics. This is something that was only the domain of financial guys or domain of marketing guys earlier. Now it is the domain of a HR guy today. Today you do a referral check with somebody, and what happens? You say, "Jaake reference check karke aao." And what does he do? That guy gives you the name. This guy calls that guy whose name has come from this guy, and then what do you expect that guy to tell you? That he's all rotten, because they've already agreed, what they're going to say, right? But we go through that motion. Today you don't have to do that. Online has so much information about each guy. If a guy tells you, I'm a very hard working guy, I really work hard, and then you figure out, ye 4 baje tak to internet pe hota hai, right? So, when does he work hard, right? How does he come and attend office next morning? So, what time you wake up, what time you sleep, what sort of sites you visit, what are the friends you have, what do you do on Facebook, all this is real time available. If you do not have analytics in your organization to cut through this, you'll find it difficult. And you'll have to start segmenting your people into finer segments to be able to draw differentiation on managing people in one organization versus another organization. Engaged communities is not an internet phenomena, it's going to be a phenomena within the organization as well, because you're not going to move away from having employees to having communities, right? And how do you engage with those communities? How do you positively, obviously you don't want them to be chatting, but there are many other ways to engage with communities. And if you don't have engaged communities, you're going to have people move out of the organization, right? It's going to happen. Bring your own mobile devices is a part of part of the life. You will not be able to cater to providing devices to people as organizations, because the life cycle of the devices is shortening so quickly that you cannot replenish them. So best is leave these guys. The next problem, how do I securitize? How do I make sure, you know, they don't spend all their time? Well, we'll have to figure that out. There are no straight answers, but answers are emerging, you know, on all these things. And the other one that I want to talk about is, you know, what was said this morning is, career options up to now have been very straightforward. You know, I will move from X organization to Y organization, Z organization to another organization. But we've never had a climate where people have wanted to become entrepreneurs, right? This is another area that will come up, where people will come and tell you, I actually don't want to work for you. I want to work for myself, right? How do you retain that guy? Or how will you abstain people from moving, or good people from moving? Better and better people, higher class people are going to move towards entrepreneurship. How do you retain them? I think you will have to redesign your organizations to make sure, do we really have an entrepreneurial culture? Do we empower people? Do we give them what it takes to, are we willing to share profits with them going forward? That's not your decision. Probably your shareholders will take this decision, but this will be on the table. You know, if Google retains the best talent, if Facebook retains the best talent, because they share wealth with these guys, right? Every guy is a hook, right? It's only when he wants to do something really outside that he says, now I'm going, and then you can't stop him, right? I think we will go through that metamorphosis as well, and organizations will have to begin to look at many of these things going forward. So I think these are the tectonic shifts that are happening. We'll have to be cognizant. There are no easy answers. I don't have all the answers either, but I think this is a different debate that's coming, because the environment in 2020 is going to be very different from where we are